Bernard-Henri Lévy is here. He's a French philosopher and author. He started his career as a war reporter for Combat, the underground newspaper founded by Albert Camus. He has written some 30 books, including Barbarism with a Human Face, and most recently, Who Killed Daniel Pearl? This conversation this evening is the first in a series of talks about the transatlantic alliance and America's role in the world. We want to listen to people who care about America and who visit us, but also see us from a different perspective than we might see ourselves, and have something to say about who we are and where we are and what are the great issues of our time. I am pleased to have him here at this table, not only because he has something to say, because he is my good friend. Welcome.
Thanks, John.
Let me first talk about, you have characterized yourself as an anti-American. What is that?
It means that I might not agree with the politics of this government, of Bush government, and I don't agree, but it means that I hate the hatred of America as itself. This is a strong current today all over the world, in the Muslim world, in Europe also, elsewhere. Hate of America, not because of what she does, but because of what she is, America. Not because of her bad sides, of her shadow sides, but because of her good sides. This is anti-Americanism, and this is the thing which I assimilate to fascism. In my country, for instance, you must know that anti-Americanism, before becoming a theme of the left today, was born on the right side of the political spectrum.
Yes.
In the 20s and the 30s, it was one of the main themes of the extreme right. Robert Brasillac, Drieux-La Rochelle, all these, Louis-Ferdinand Céline,
right,
the pro-Nazi writer, his main enemy was not Russia, was not Soviet Union, communism. He said it was America. And he had a sentence for that, the intimate, the inner America, America which is in the mind of every human being. That's what Céline said. So you have this strong current of anti-Americanism, which is something which I cannot stand, which is anti-democratic and so on. It does not mean that I agree with Mr. Bush government.
Right.
And by the way, I don't agree at all on many points, on many topics.
All right, we'll talk to some of those issues, Iraq and others, but what's the link between the present feeling and that fascist feeling back then? I mean, how is that idea embodied today among your friends in France? America is what to them? Too big, too powerful, too arrogant, too strong, too what?
It is also a country we love. We must keep also the good perspective. I was thinking when I came in the car here, I remember my youth during the Vietnam War. There was a real hatred of America everywhere, and also in my generation. We wished the defeat of America. We hoped that America will be beaten by Vietnamese army. Very different today. You must know, this must be said very clearly. Today in France, each time an American soldier falls, the 60th of last week, it is a disaster for every French. There is a real sympathy, a real compassion, a real solidarity on this field. So, of course, anti-Americanism exists as anti-French exists, and the bridge are very, there is a big traffic on the bridge, like on the Brooklyn Bridge tonight.
Because of the snow, yes.
Because of the snow and because of the storm between us, American and France. But the bridges are not cut. There is still a lot of people in France who consider Americans as their brothers. You have a lot of writers, my colleagues, who think, how would I say, that Paris was built by American writers as well as by French writers. Nathalie Barnet, Janet Flanners, Sylvia Beach,
right,
who held such a beautiful bookstore.
But these are all people who wrote from Paris.
Who what?
Wrote from Paris. Janet Flanners
wrote from Paris, introduced some American writers in Paris, and made the spirit of Paris. The spirit of Paris. Today, my friend Adam Gopnik of the New Yorker, he is one of these Americans of Paris. New York belonged to a few French writers as well as to American, and Paris belongs to you. US, come back home. That's what a lot of us have the desire to tell you today.
Come back home to what?
To our home. In the Vietnam War, we said, US, go home.
Right.
Okay, you remember that. Today, we would like American writers, American people in general to consider again that Paris is a city of theirs, that they are at home in Paris.
Why?
This is, I think it really, and my friends Pascal Bruckner, André Glucksmann, many others feel like that. Even if we don't agree, even if we are disgusted by some aspects of the Bush policy, and we can, not only Iraq, other topics.
All right, but Tom Friedman, my friend who was on the program last night talking about the Geneva Accords, what you wrote about today in the Wall Street Journal, has written a column in which says we are at war with France. We, the United States, is at war with France because the French do not understand, Mr. Friedman has written, that if America loses in Iraq, the French lose in Iraq.
I hope Mr. Friedman regrets this article. I hope sincerely he regrets, because it is absurd. We French know that if America lose, we lose.
You do. You understand that.
We know that. We understand that.
Then why aren't you helping America then? Why aren't the French helping?
France disagreed at a moment. Between friends, it is normal to disagree. This happens in life. If you, Charlie Rose, you are my friend, if you take a bad decision, I will tell you. I will tell you you are taking the wrong road. It does not mean that I am your enemy. It means that I am your friend. I know Villepin. Villepin, I would even say, I can say that he is a friend. I hope I am his and he is mine. He's not anti-American. He loves this country. He spent some time here. He has a real physical solidarity with this country. He's not enemy. Mr. Friedman is completely wrong. And today...
That he's wrong in which he says that there's a war, we're at war with France, because we see the world so differently.
The real war is with terrorism. We have enough common enemies, you and us. Saddam Hussein, if he's still living. Osama bin Laden, if he's still living. The Taliban, who are taking power again in some parts of Afghanistan. There is a war going on today in Afghanistan. Still, war is not over. The quagmire is in Iraq and also in Afghanistan. These are real enemies. France and America are not enemies. It's crazy to say that. It's crazy to think it.
Does France believe, and I know France does not speak with one voice, you and your friend and my friend Bernard Kouchner saw the war in Iraq differently.
Yeah.
You very much were in favor of the Geneva Accords together, but on Iraq, you two Frenchmen saw it differently, correct?
Of course, but this is democracy. In America, you had demonstrations in New York against the war in Iraq.
Sure.
You had some people who... I was yesterday night with some American friends of the Penn Club, writers. They were not in favor of the war in Iraq, and they are not anti-American for that. You can be in a democracy. Mr. Bush must understand that. We may disagree with him without being enemies of the nation. For instance, there is not only the war in Iraq. I think that death penalty
Sure.
is a relic of barbarism.
A relic of barbarism.
A relic of barbarism. Sorry for the accent. I can say that. I can say that that Mr. Bush is not a real Christian, as he pretends to be, when he never in his career forgive to a man on death penalty without being an enemy of America. It is our right to disagree. This is the strength of democracies. And Kouchner and me in France, of course, Kouchner was in favor of Kouchner, who is my close friend. We are together ambassadors in Europe of this peace process of Geneva. He thought the war was right. I thought it was wrong. That's debate.
There is this argument, though, that President Chirac saw the war in Iraq more than just as an opportunity to express a disagreement with America, which he believed in, but also saw the war as an opportunity to try to create a bipolar world, to have France take a stand as opposed to America in terms of values and ideals, and offering the world a different perspective.
Charlie, let's be serious. I give the credit to Mr. Bush to think that he was in favor of this war of Iraq for reasons of consciousness.
Right.
I don't think that he was in favor of that because of Halliburton and so on and so on. So please, let's do the
So you don't do the same thing for Chirac?
Let's do the same for Chirac. Chirac was against this war, and I'm not in favor of Chirac either. I voted against him, and I will vote against him if he presents again. He's not my friend politically, but he had a belief. He thought that to wage this war will launch again the war of civilization between Islam and Western world. But he thought that it will introduce terrorism again in Iraq. That's what he thought, right or wrong.
But there is also the idea that perhaps that France seized an opportunity to build up Europe as an alternative, as a bipolar opposite to America, as a competitor.
But this is the best which can happen to Western world. Never in history of civilization you have had a big power without counterpower. This never existed.
The U.S. and the Soviet Union.
Yes,
would
U.S.
be the
and Soviet
example.
Union and so on.
But
all the story. So today, the idea that this is a philosophical question. The idea that the Western world can speak in two voices, can walk on two legs, is a good idea. It is good for the world, and it is good for America, and it is good for Europe. I know that you have in America some people who would like Europe to disintegrate. I met some people in Washington, some great columnists, which I respect. I know that they hope that Europe will not build. They are wrong.
Because they don't want to see a strong Europe because they think it challenges America.
Challenge is good. I am a true liberal in the two sense. Challenge is good. If America was the unique superpower, it would decay. It would vanish. This is also a philosophical point. A structure, a whole, is built not only from inside but from outside. Tell me what is your border, I tell you who you are. If you have not any border, if you are not any external side, you are nothing. You just lose your identity. A strong America needs in front of her some real partners as solid and as strong as she is. That's why America has interest to Europe.
It is said that France and Europe did not experience 9/11. That after 9/11, the United States went to war. A war against terrorism, first in Afghanistan, and then they went from a war against terrorism to a war against Iraq, perhaps for a variety of reasons. It is said that the defining event for America's life in the last 20 years has been 9/11, and the recognition that we were vulnerable, that terrorism was the predominant threat. It is said that the defining event for France and Germany was the end of the Cold War. So you look at the world from two very different defining events.
Why not? Why not? Okay, I agree that we did not, it is true that we did not experience terrorism as you did. That is true. And that's why so many Frenchmen, beginning from myself, I was in New York as many, it is not such a big thing, a few days after. In solidarity, in friendship, I thought that the world, the entire world, was shot in the heart when the Twin Towers were shot, when Daniel Pearl was killed. Who decided to devote 1 year of his life to rebuild, to contribute to the memory of this fine, brave American journalist? I'm sorry, a Frenchman. So I am convinced of that. I know that it is an American journalist who has been killed in this terrible way. I know that the Twin Towers were not in London or in Paris, in New York. That's why I am solidar to America. But there are some other problems in the world. You have some forgotten wars today in Africa, in Asia, with hundreds of Twin Towers every year. Hundreds, if I say, in number of dead. With this also, these people also, we have to have our heart. You American, us European.
Does France want to lead Europe? Or does France simply want to be part of Europe?
I suppose politics is politics, and politics is an art to govern and to take leadership. So, of course, France has the ambition to lead Europe. Sure, but why not? If the choice is between Berlusconi, who is Berlusconi in Italy, who is a quasi-fascist, and who was former fascist in his government, Mr. Fini, who is in the government of Berlusconi. If the choice is between Berlusconi and Chirac, I prefer 100 times Chirac. You know, it's that there is no.
Would you feel the same way about Schroeder? If it's choices between Schroeder and Chirac?
No, because Schroeder is a good man. Joschka Fischer, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Affairs Minister, is a brave man. He's the only Foreign Affairs of Europe who said, for instance, that the constitution of the future Europe should have in his text the never again of Auschwitz. Fischer said that once, that the ground one of the future Europe should be never more of Auschwitz, and for that he deserves all our gratitude. So, okay, it will not be a one leadership. The principle of Europe is not this question, this quarrel in a sandbox between leaders behaving as children. It will not that.
Okay, suppose one thing happens, that the United States says to France, we want to listen to you. Tell us what you think. Tell us where we can partner. What is it France wants? What has to take place to rebuild the comity between these two nations?
In Iraq,
what is necessary?
In Iraq, for instance, the proposal of France. I'm not the ambassador of France. We have a good ambassador. He can do that. He will do that better than me. But I think that the proposal of France to share the weight on one condition, that the command would be United Nations, is a reasonable one. Why United Nations should involve in this Iraqi quagmire if the power is not shared, the responsibility.
Okay, so if the United States would share the power, France would share the responsibility.
I hope so.
Okay.
I hope so. And I would be very angry against my government if he would escape his responsibility in this case. I think, for instance, we should together. There was one point quite right in the Bush argument and the people around Bush about United Nations. They said, how should we accept the rule of United Nations where you have a Commission of Human Rights directed by Gaddafi? You remember that? They're right saying that. They're quite right. It is true that United Nations, where a democracy like France and America has the same vote as Liberia at the time of Charles Taylor or Sierra Leone, is a scandal. Yes. So we should together
reform the United Nations.
Reform the United Nations. We should, Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney with Villepin, we should, and intellectuals, and Charlie Rose and Bernard-Henri Lévy, let's sit around the table and think how to reform United Nations. One simple proposal. In the civilian life, if your neighbor, if a politician man makes a big murder, or a big crime, he goes to jail and he is deprived of his civic rights for some years. He is deprived from the right to vote, for instance. We should invent a process which could allow to deprive from their vote countries who really and in a large scale violate human rights, the rights of minority, provoke a bloodbath, genocide, and so on. We should agree, America and Europe, on some rules of this sort. It is true that Liberia of Charles Taylor cannot have the same right to decide of peace and war than America and France. But let's think about it instead of making muscle like Mr. Schwarzenegger in California. Let's think, let's sit as friends should do.
Thank you for coming. I have to let you go so you can make it to the airport on a snowy Friday evening in New York.